Buonasera a tutte, tutte e tutto. Sono Silvia, faccio parte dell'associazione Parsec con cui abbiamo organizzato questo evento. Iniziamo insomma questo talk e questa proiezione. Stasera ho l'onore di parlare con Ariel Caine, che vedete qui con noi in diretta da Londra. There are people tapping. Hello everyone, I am Silvia. I'm part of Parsec. Tonight I have the honor of speaking with Ariel Caine, an artist and researcher representing forensic architecture. This talk is part of the Green Screen Showcase that we curated, also in line with Ferrapolis Festival. That is another festival that we do related to arts and ecology. With Green Screen, we want to talk about the relationship between art and ecology through the video, and this is why we are doing this screening tonight that showcased works by many people, including forensic architecture, and we have been supported by Porto Saragozza neighborhood economically. So if you want to help us out, you can fill out the form that is going to be there next to the camera in order to show our results to the council, basically. I would like to tell you a few things about forensic architecture and the project we are proposing tonight. Forensic architecture is a counter-investigative agency incorporated into Goldsmith University, has been active since 2010, investigates state violence and human rights violations using architectural and digital visualization techniques. The team is multidisciplinary and includes scientific and artistic professionals. Therefore, their work is presented both in court, supporting legal claims, and also in artistic context, like the Biennial of Venice, this work, for example, in 2016. The methodology they use is very complex and layered, and we're going to try to unpack a little bit tonight. I would like to introduce Ariel Caine, Jerusalem-born, London-based artist and researcher. His practice focuses on the intersection of spatial three-dimensional photography, modulation and technologies of inquiry, and how they function within the production of cultural memories and narrational narratives. He's currently lecturer in the Department of Culture, Communication and Media at the UCL, and between 2016 and 2021, he was project coordinator and researcher of forensic architecture, supervising the work we're going to show tonight. The work we're going to show tonight is basically composed by two works: destruction and return in al-Araqib and ground truth. And this work aims to chronicle the repeated destruction of the village of al-Araqib in the northern Naqab desert. You've probably heard of the Najib desert, and Najib is the term in Hebrew, while Naqab is the Arabic one. So it's the same thing, and we're going to talk about this. And the desert becomes in this work a place of borders, struggles, and claims. On the other hand, the Palestinian Bedouins claim their land and the fact that they have lived there for years and years before the creation of the state of Israel. On the other hand, the state of Israel considers the Bedouins to be nomads and therefore not legitimate owners of those lands. Moreover, with the biblical idea of the desert will blossom again, it is intended to transform the desert, which is therefore considered uncultivable, barren, no man's land, into cultivable, and green land into forest. So we're going to talk about climate struggle and ecological engagement as a colonizing weapon. And this is basically why we decided to showcase this work. All right, thank you. Tonight we're going to screen two videos that we talk about the same issue. Some parts are different, but some are very similar. Can you explain why?
So first of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Silvia and Julia and everyone at Parsec for the invitation to speak. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If no, tell me to raise my voice. I can speak louder as well. So thank you very much for the invite to speak and show this project and to talk about forensic architecture. Obviously, this conversation is also, as we all are aware, happening at a very difficult time, to put it lightly, with the situation in Gaza and Lebanon, inside of Israel, West Bank, and then Naqab itself escalating, beyond belief. So, I mean, this is in a way a very somber backdrop to this question. Yeah, it's in the back of my mind, at least, for sure, like when I'm speaking about this. And I think we'll touch about the current political situation and the kind of humanitarian situation as well, like later in the conversation. So, I mean, that will come up. In terms of the films, and just introducing or answering your first question, the two films, Ground Truth and Destruction and Return in al-Araqib, are two videos that basically came out of two different stages in the same project. So Ground Truth is actually I don't know which order you're going to screen the films, but Ground Truth, which is the maybe precedes the second one, in a way foregrounds the story or tells the story of the village of al-Araqib. It tells the story of the land struggle, the struggle for land rights in the Naqab, contextualizes that this particular village's struggle in the context of the long history of land rights struggle by the Bedouin communities in this area, and kind of talks about the project Ground Truth that came out and that came out of this collaboration between forensic architecture, the village of al-Araqib and the different families that live there, and a few other organizations, including Zohrot, Active Stills, independent researchers, and Ground Truth basically tells the story of this land struggle and the way that we started to produce together these types of images of the land transformation. The second video, Destruction and Return in al-Araqib, is in a way came out of an expert testimony that predominantly that we wrote in forensic architecture as part of the legal, as part of our support for the legal process in which the families were involved. So this second film is actually kind of a video form of some of the findings that we then provided as part of the family's claims. So it's more of a technical kind of production of evidence around that came out of the project.
Okay, thank you. In the book, we're talking about this work, and it was very fascinating for us to see how many layers build this project, different layers, and we would like to unpack these layers. We choose to screen these videos to talk about this project in order to show how ecology is instrumentalized and used to successfully dispossess people from their land and how it can be used as a colonial tool. And so here we have Bedouins considered nomads. However, there haven't been nomads for a very long time. And they are banished from their lands for various reasons, because the government claims the Bedouins were not in the land before 1948 and they are illegal. And also they based this on the Ottoman code that said that uncultivated land had to be cultivated. We would like to understand these different layers and how ecology can be an instrument of colonization, and how there is this dangerous binarism between the desert and the forest, but also nature and culture, etc.
Yeah, I mean it's a very dense topic and film, and the project tries to, both the Al Weizmann's book, The Conflict Shorelines, and this project that came after that, try to unpack some of these kind of very complex relations between environment and different cultures and politics, borders, colonization. All of these things come in, but I think think one of the main questions that we try and look into is the role of environment as part of processes of colonization and dispossession. Like what does the, also in a way asking as part of, as part of forensic architecture, if we look at the weaponization or the kind of analysis of acts of violence, what actually constitutes a weapon, and can environment itself be looked at as through this kind of articulation? And of course it can. And then it was, we tried to see what kind of different readings or different ways the environment, and how is this defined, and how so I lost my thread for a moment. I think what we are trying to see in this area, if you try to imagine the area that we're talking about, if we know that Gaza is on the east, the western side, and the West Bank is on the east, and you have the land of what then became in 1948 Israel, cutting across, you have the kind of horizontal division of land that has its politics, and the war between a Jewish presence in the middle with Palestinian presence and Arab presence on either side, which started what the Israelis termed the battle for the Negev after 1948 and during the 50s. So a kind of battle to win, to take over environment and kind of create a land mass or a land buffer that is waged through the environment in order to cut off, to prevent kind of, or to create continuity of Jewish presence in the land and cut off Palestinian continuity of presence. You then also have the line of the desert itself, the desertification, the aridity line that also cuts through this area, and which brings in the kind of imagery, but also the imaginaries that are associated with life, and or the colonial imaginaries that connect life and cultivation as opposed to death and the desert, to put it very kind of formulaically. And then you have also archaeological or lines that go vertically into the desert. So the idea that there are layers that go into the ground, layers of soil.
Archaeological what?
An archaeological reading of the ground. So not just a horizontal view of the land where you have borders and you have movements, but also a vertical reading of the land, which is, and in this area, like many others, there is a question of who came first, or a lot of the arguments revolve around this idea of antiquity and continuity of presence throughout history. And the land and whatever is registered on the land is being co-opted and used in these different battles of narrative. And so the desert itself is not just a, it's not just a matter of whether there's vegetation or not, but there's also a sedimentation kind of reading, or a reading of layers within the desert, and the land itself, including its vegetation, and are looked at as a palimpsest. So a place where it's constantly there's a kind of writing, erasing that's continuously kind of unfold on the surface. I think it's this understanding that, or this reading of landscape as palimpsest, as something that records events and things that happen to it, and the ability to read environment, in Eyal's word, as a photograph, that through these kinds of inscriptions on the land, you could, and inscriptions of recordings of the land, as in photographs, aerial photographs, maps, stories, testimonies, walks on the ground itself, you could start reading the politics and this history that's been kind of, and this war that's been waged on the place itself. I mean, this battle for the Negev that I mentioned, that is between, yeah, the Israeli state trying to push away well, in essence, non-Jewish presences of Palestinian presence from the land. It's waged obviously also through arms, actual wars. So the conventional way we understand wars being undertaken, but they also operate, or almost predominantly operate, since the 1950s through the transformation of environment, through the transformation of law, and the transformation of epistemologies. So, and this would be kind of made clear, I think it's a good precursor to the film itself, because it's kind of, maybe the film tries to explain this, but apart from driving people away and dispossessing and displacing the Bedouin and the Palestinians from these areas of the land, there's also a use of agriculture itself. As we said, I mean, the planting of forests, that kind of taking over fields that were cultivated before and turning them into something else. So transforming the landscape in order to transform the association that landscape has. So if a Bedouin, so changing the whole imagination around what, and the memory of what this landscape is and was. There's the second, or the other type that I was talking about, the other means, was the juridical one, which is changing, and you referred to the Ottoman law, and there's a whole system or doctrine that the Israeli state put in place in order to nullify the possibility of Bedouins to claim for land rights, through this idea of disconnecting, or by enforcing this idea that because the Bedouins are supposedly nomads, which they already weren't, but maybe the colonial belief, or the claim by the state was that they are nomads, and therefore a priori could not have a connection to agriculture and to the land itself, and therefore that they cannot also have land rights. So there's a whole epistemology also that comes out, both a juridical epistemology, but also a popular cultural epistemology that doesn't account for different definitions of what does it mean to be settled, what does it mean to have a village, what does it mean to do agriculture. And these ideas, or these notions that Israel developed, don't, or completely exclude, the types of definitions of a village, or the types of life, that agricultural life as well, that existed before. And therefore, when Israeli academic experts or juridical experts look at maps or aerial photographs, or go to the place itself, they don't see Bedouin habitation. They see emptiness, they see a desert, they see something that does not qualify as sedentary existence. And this whole struggle by the Bedouin activists, the families, starting from the 50s, but officially from the 70s, their struggle for land rights was also a struggle for a changed epistemology. And this project, kind of, that forensic architecture kind of joined the project with, and the one that I kind of was coordinator and initiator of as well to some degree, tries to join and use media in re-articulating or helping in re-articulate this epistemology, and trying to use different forms of media practices and testimony practices and architectural practices as well to in some way bridge the gap or allow for an expansion of the existing cartographic and juridical systems, and show how through them we can actually see traces and evidence of this other type of existence that is the one that is coming through the Bedouin heritage.
So there is a relationship between the Bedouins of this story and other minorities of the world, such as indigenous people of Latin America and Australia. In 1884-85, in Berlin took place the Berlin Conference that stated that there is a right for government to declare terra nullius, land of no one. Our consideration about this is that there is an evident European responsibility in dispossession of native people from their lands outside Europe. And so how would you describe it? There are any positive examples of how people can fight back, especially if European people want to support the fight?
I mean, there are obviously, many different examples of native people, of people being driven, out of their lands by colonizers. Well, inside of Europe, outside of Europe, throughout the globe, it's different. And I mean, I don't know, like, in terms of my expertise is not there in terms of kind of giving a analysis of this type of anthropological nature maybe. So yeah, I'm not sure about.
I mean, I was just thinking about how this terra nullius principle and this land of no one, which was debated in Europe in 1885, was like something that is visible now in a strange way, right? So it's like there is like this heritage that goes on between Europe and Israel, which is clear, but also like strange. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's of course the kind of both from the Australian context, from the New Zealand, well, in New Zealand as well. I mean, there's different heritages or kind of a continuation from, and as we'll also speak of like a bit later in North Africa as well. Like there are different resonances between and the kind of idea of self-determination and national projects that come through or come together with a colonial project. I think and a lot of the kind of idea of development, for instance, and the development that comes with environmental transformation or ecological transformation are many times put together hand in hand with kind of the colonizer coming and bringing bring back life or bring development or progress, and all of these notions. I think in the context of Israel, Palestine, there's definitely there's a lot of equation that's going on. I think also more so also recently, like with the genocide now in Gaza, with the equation between colonialism, Zionism, and this idea of terra nullius as part of this process of complete erasure, epistemological, historical. And I have, maybe because I'm so close to it personally, I have while I do completely see these connections, and you really see the line where kind of one nation is learning from the other, and you have legal structures that migrate from or carry on from the Ottoman through the British colonization to the Israeli colonization. The mix inside of this particular mix inside of Israel-Palestine is has a bit of a added complexity somehow, because there's multiple claims for return which don't exist in other cases in a similar way, like the British in New Zealand or in Australia didn't have this type of return, and even the Italians in Libya didn't have the exact same type of.
I would suggest that maybe now we show the video. We watched the video. Yeah.
Everyone's back.
People are clapping here. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm so sorry I had to interrupt you earlier. We had some, again, tech issues and we needed to, but thank you so much. Yeah, so we watched the video and I was wondering if you wanted to add something from the question I asked you before, and you wanted to, you had something else to say about that, or I can go on with some questions.
I mean, I think let's continue, and then also when we get to the questions and answers afterward, like, yeah, we can we can add then. I think let's continue.
Okay, so I think now it's a good time to talk about what's happening now and what are the current events. So yes, you are not part of forensic anymore, but you're still working with the Bedouins in that region. So I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what you're doing with them and what is the actual situation going on right now? What are the developments after the last videos? Traduco velocemente. Appunto, volevamo saperne di più sulla situazione attuale rispetto appunto ai Bedouin in Palestina, e quindi abbiamo chiesto ad Ariel se può appunto aggiornarci su quello che è successo dopo la realizzazione dell'ultimo video. Lui non fa più parte di Forensic ufficialmente, ma continua ad avere dei rapporti appunto con i Bedouin e con le rivendicazioni. Yes, so thank you.
Yeah, so as you said, yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I think we'll get to talking about the films themselves also probably later. I mean, in terms of, as you say, I left forensic architecture in a way during actually the making of Destruction and Return to al-Araqib, the second video. I mean, that was already after I left almost, and I came back to write this report and produce this video with forensic architecture for the legal process. But at the moment, as we know, this history of destruction and dispossession that's going on in the Naqab is predated the state. So the battle for the Negev, the colonial battle for a narrative and the terraforming of the Negev started before the foundation of the Israeli state. And in a way, now in the last 2 years probably, so since the last government came into office inside of Israel, and definitely since October 7th of 2023, there's the continuation of the previous policy of displacement, dispossession, and the enactment of both through a terraforming of the land. So the use of environment, the transformation of environment, and in a way almost of climate as part of the Judaification process. This process over the last 2 years, because the government that came into office was very blatantly and outspokenly a fascist or proto-fascist, plus very religious in a messianic type of way. Government, all of these policies have become not hidden policies that operate through scientific or kind of benign means, but they've become completely outspoken. So they've become the official line of many of the state offices. And with that, the amounts of demolitions of villages and houses across the Negev have increased rapidly. Any kind of demonstrate has been curtailed a lot, and over the last year, this policy of physical destruction and displacement has now extended also into the western part of the Naqab, which is the Gaza Strip, which has been completely destroyed. And while it's not fully official policy, there are a lot of talks and kind of there's a revival or a kind of a revival of plans or dreams or to resettle in the Jewish sense, resettle Gaza. So that's another kind of a new type of articulation of this phrase, the right of return, that's been completely transformed and distorted in this phase through this kind of Jewish messianic policy, and this idea of return to Gaza as is starting to become a policy that's more and more being spoken of. And this destruction of Gaza has been documented quite extensively also by forensic architecture throughout this year. Both the use of the actual military operations, but also the use of the destruction of agricultural land and in a way a targeting of agriculture as part of the means of starvation and weakening or displacement of the population in Gaza. So these policies that were never as extreme in the Negev, in the Naqab Desert, have, together with this kind of rise of the messianic right-wing government in Gaza, kind of got a whole new meaning or materialized in a whole new radical way that's being kind of played out now. Yeah, the current project that I'm involved with are in a way in the destruction and return to al-Araqib, we have this scene with the paths. That's kind of look at the footpaths, the reading of the trails that connect the different architectural elements and kind of in a way outline the village, right? And there's this zoom out in the aerial photograph where we kind of start with a individual feature, and as you zoom out and you look at all these traces, it was made clear to us or made tangible how this structure of the village of al-Araqib actually kind of could be seen in the traces on the ground. And in a way, this example of it, or this thing, what we see in al-Araqib is, in a way, if you continue to zoom out, you could see this in the entire Naqab. And this zoom out doesn't stop in the borders of the state, but it actually existed in a different articulation of the land that doesn't adhere to the national borders of, between Gaza, the West Bank, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. And the projects that I'm working on now, both with Bedouin architect called Lubna Hassana from Lakia in the Naqab, and also with another project with another Bedouin researcher. These two projects, in a way, look at these wider viewpoints of the area, trying to trace on a much larger kind of scale the presence of Bedouins and kind of the way that movement and national borders and infrastructure are in a way transforming this area and erasing the past traces, but also preventing the future existence of these, or the return to, or the kind of future existence of these places. So, and part of the kind of hope, I think, the same as with the forensic architecture project, part of the idea is to try and, first of all, show and document these traces before they completely disappear. So, I mean, we talk about the almost emergency archaeological projects. So trying to trace these things before they're gone. And there are places in the center of the Naqab, where the Sayaj area was, where there's still not too much, or it's called the Beersheba Valley. There are places where Israel hasn't completely developed, quote unquote, and where even still today there are still kind of a pattern that is similar to what existed before. And this is an area that's most on the sites of the government to kind of completely, that's the last, let's say, it's a place that's about to go through radical transformation through the state's kind of action. And so a lot of the focus is on that area, trying to document it and read across time, and then look at it as a larger environment. I mean, one thing that's important to add is that I was now looking at the film again while you're all watching it as well. And in the film, it says that, this cycle of demolishing and return that goes on in the village has been going on for 130 times. I think that's in the movie, in the film, and it's now over 220 times. So this cycle of destruction and return in al-Araqib is still ongoing. All throughout the war, over this last year, it's been persisting, sometimes even accelerating these cycles. Throughout this entire time, when rockets have been kind of fired, I mean, obviously into Gaza, but also into the Naqab itself from Gaza. on top of not having electricity, water, infrastructure, all of that, all of the Bedouin population in the Naqab also had no bomb shelters. So, and actually the only casualties from the Hamas rockets directly, and also the Iranian rockets that came in earlier this year, were Bedouin. So this is really a kind of
Sorry, Ariel. Sorry, just to understand. The casualties from Hamas rockets were Bedouins because they couldn't access to bomb shelters.
I mean, there are Hamas. Yeah, I mean, I need to be more accurate. I mean, first of all, yes, the Bedouins have in these unrecognized villages, or the so-called unrecognized villages, have no ability to build a shelter, because any type of shelter or permanent structure that's being built is then demolished by the state. And so, yeah, the thousands of rockets that are fired on Israel have been hitting. I mean, well, the Israeli Jewish population has shelters, and they do get hit as well, but they suffer much less casualties because they are protected. The Bedouins are living in, either tents or shacks, or, I mean, very kind of, there's no proper protection from missiles. And with the Iranian rockets, the only casualty was a young Bedouin girl. So, yeah, this is just an addition to just to demonstrate some of this kind of complexity of these communities that are part of the conflict and part of the story of the conflict, but they're also kind of caught in between in this, like the discrimination continues into these types of scenarios as well. I just thought it's important to mention both the continuation of the destruction, but also this idea of their involvement in the conflict now.
Thank you so much. I think we're done. It was very, very dense. It was very nice to see you again. It was absolutely amazing to talk to you. It's been a great pleasure.
Can we thank
you. Unfortunately, it's a bit dark, but as I told you, behind you, there is a big screen with your face, so we can see you better. That's why we are in the dark. But now the public is coming here to say hi to you.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your research, thank you so much for your, my English is really bad, but thank you so much for your research, for your speaking tonight. It was like so powerful. So thank you.
Thanks for
other to say thank you. And we are here, and I know that you can see us for all the meet, but we are here. I mean, we are
in the darkness.
In the darkness, but searching light. And thank you for everything. Really, thank you.
No, thanks for listening. And, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't be there with you in person.
Yeah.
It would have been much better.
Yeah. We have to do another round in person.
I'll learn Italian as well.
Amazing. Yes. Sounds great.
Can we say free Palestine?
Yes, you can say free Palestine.
Yeah.
That was a question. Can we say free Palestine? Yes, we can. I guess.
Yeah,
totally.
Obviously we can.
Okay. All right, Ariel. Thank you so much. Have a good night. And talk to you soon. Thanks again.
You.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao.